So welcome to the very first Beyond the Trailer special guest episode where I'm going to be talking to one of you, a BTT viewer, one of the most engaged, and that happens to be Rhys Jenkins. Hi, Rhys.
Hello.
So where are you coming from? Where are we talking to you from?
Southwest England.
Oh, excellent. So what we're going to talk about today are the 2014 Oscars. A couple of viewers have been asking for my predictions, and it's a little early to get an idea of exactly what the Academy is going to zero in on because it's so political. However, we can talk about what films we've seen that we'd like to see get recognized, and also what films that are coming up that we're looking forward to. Because, it's a little crowded, Rhys, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you start? What films have you seen so far this year that you think deserve to be Oscar contenders?
Well, I always think it's a bit of a shame because you've got the really important, well, not important, but you've got the really good films that always get the really good reviews, but they're not quite as mainstream enough to get into the Oscars. So I think my favourite film that I've seen so far has to be Star Trek Into Darkness. I thought just brilliant storyline, brilliant acting from Zachary Quinto and Benedict Cumberbatch. But of course, it's really unlikely that would be considered for the Oscars, which is a massive shame because I think it beats most of the films that are going to be considered. So, other than that, I'm not really sure because Iron Man 3, for me, and I know I'm going to annoy a lot of people with this, but it was a huge disappointment. What they did with the Mandarin, I just thought was a massive shame. And I think Shane Black really could have pulled it off a lot better.
What about Star Trek Into Darkness do you feel is Oscar worthy? Who would you nominate?
Benedict Cumberbatch, without a doubt. J.J. Abrams for Best Director, and I'd probably consider it for Best Picture because I think it was just exceptional. It really beats all the old ones.
Since you're one of the most engaged BTT viewers, I'm sure that you saw that I was not a big fan of the film.
Yeah.
And recently at a Star Trek convention, it was voted the worst Star Trek movie of all time. But that's by diehard Star Trek fans. So what I guess I'm asking you is, from your perspective, why is it? What's great about what makes Star Trek, Into Darkness, besides the enjoyment factor? What do you think makes it an important film?
I think the fact it's to an extent believable. It's understandable that within 200 years we could have the kind of technology that they do, and I think the way Abrams manages to pull it off and manages to make it look realistic and understandable, I think that's really something a lot of people, especially the Star Wars franchise with the first 6 movies, I felt like that really didn't. They really just weren't believable ideas, whereas Star Trek managed to put it off quite well.
Well, I have to say, one huge contender I think this year is going to be Benedict Cumberbatch, probably for the Fifth Estate. So Benedict Cumberbatch is a name that not a lot of people here in the United States are familiar with. A lot of them were introduced to him in Star Trek Into Darkness. But as someone who lives in the UK, can you explain the Benedict Cumberbatch phenomenon?
He is brilliant. He has a huge thing in Britain. Sherlock, one of the best TV shows around.
Yeah, I love that show.
I'm not a massive fan of it, but a lot of people rave about it, and he's considered such a good actor because he can pull off almost anything, comical characters, or he can pull off really serious characters like Khan. He's going to be doing the motion capture with the Necromancer and Smaug, and I think it's really commendable to see an actor who can pull off such a huge variety of characters and ideas.
How big is he over there? Like, is there an American star you can compare him to?
No, not really, actually.
Well, in terms of
really sure.
Not in terms of acting, but in terms of like celebrity. Like, is he in your tabloids a lot?
Not much is the problem because it's taken over by the royals mostly, and then the footballers and the wags and the people that people don't care about. We want to hear about the kind of people like Benedict Cumberbatch. But looking at it from a theatrical point of view, he is huge and he is really well respected and commended within Britain.
And he has like his female fan base too. But I think it's interesting that doesn't turn guys off from liking him either, though.
No, definitely not, because he manages to pull off the characters that the guys are like, as well as being seen as attractive by the women.
Well, I'm sorry to say I don't think that he's going to get nominated for Star Trek Into Darkness, but I think there is a good chance he could be nominated for the Fifth Estate. So, okay, right? So that's actually one of the films I'm looking forward to. But first, real quick, the films that I think so far that I've seen that I think deserve recognition, that should be Oscar contenders, are The Butler, and I think that will be. I think it's going to be a huge Oscar contender, as I've been saying. But also, I really like The Great Gatsby. I feel The Great Gatsby really was a great snapshot of the class system that does exist in America. That I think people like. One of the things that America prides itself is that we don't have a class system. You know, we broke away, we started our own country to get rid of that, but I think one's developed anyway here. You know, economically. And I think The Great Gatsby deals with that very effectively. I don't think it's going to get recognized. Was The Great Gatsby a big hit over in the UK?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of British people are massive fans of Leonardo DiCaprio. So to see him in a piece like that, and such a great adaptation of the book, yeah, it was really quite big over here. And I can certainly see where you're coming from about it being Oscar-worthy, but not necessarily Oscar nominatable.
We'll both be disappointed with the Oscar nominations for our favorites. But, you know, it's interesting because Gatsby did play much better overseas than it did here in the United States. Okay, and so what films are you looking forward to? I think we're both looking forward to The Fifth Estate. What big Oscar movies are you excited about that are coming up, that have caught your attention? Because it's a crowded field, so who's breaking ahead for you already?
I think, I'm not sure yet, but I'd like to say the Mandela Long Walk to Freedom, because Idris Elba, again, a hugely respected British actor, as is Naomi Harris. Yes. And that looks like an exceptional film and a real credit to what Nelson Mandela did. So I think that's potential contender for that.
I have to say, are you guys proud over there that your overseas talent wins most of our awards?
Yeah, definitely. It's always great to see the British directors and actors and actresses pulling them in. You just feel a sense of patriotism, even if for nothing else. You feel it for the films and you feel it for the actors who have absolutely broken their backs. Not to say that the Americans haven't, but you seriously feel a huge thing of respect and admiration for doing it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and you guys are playing all our superheroes?
Yeah.
You've got everybody. So the films I'm excited about, and I'll get back to the films we talked about in a second, because there's an interesting angle you told me why you picked them. But I'm looking forward to The Fifth Estate, The Wolf of Wall Street. I, too, am a big DiCaprio fan, like England. I also think Dallas Buyers Club is going to be big. It's Matthew McConaughey. I feel this is going to be his year. I think he has been doing a great job building towards a nomination. I think he's laid a great foundation. I think he's in a couple of great films this year. I know there's some talk about Mud, but I think that Dallas Buyers Club is just going to knock everything else off the map in terms of the best actor race. And in short, he plays a homophobic guy in Texas in the 80s who gets AIDS or HIV, and it changes his attitude as he tries to set up an illegal drug ring to get people the medicine they need. So I think that's going to be a big movie. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So those are your two, though? Those are your two? 12 Years a Slave and Mandela?
Yeah, I'd say so. And like you said, Wolf of Wall Street, because that looks pretty huge.
Well, you said the reason you were into those two films is because you're writing a screenplay yourself.
Yes. I'm writing a film called Rudo, which is set in the 1840s, and it's about the forbidden relationship between the son of an estate owner and one of the slaves that works there. And it shows his huge battle to decide between his family and who he sees as his true love.
I think it's fascinating because you're part of a movement in Hollywood, a renaissance of civil rights movies. What inspired you to write this story, particularly because you're not from America or even the American South?
Well, I've got to say, it was probably when Nelson Mandela became ill. A large part of it became apparent to me because I started to learn more about him and what he did, and it amazed me to see how, in such a short space of time, things have changed so monumentally. I mean, if you'd have said to someone back then that a black man would rule America, they would have spat at you. They would have thought you were completely mad. And now look at it, it's the multicultural aspect of society is beautiful to see how it's come on in such a short space of time.
It's exploding, I think, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant. I think that's a really good aspect of modern day society. So yeah, that's what I'd really hoped to, that's what inspired me, was just make people see that although we're always spotting what's wrong with the aspects of the world, to make people notice that we have made improvements and that things are getting better, even if it's coming along slowly.
What do you think of the politics of the business of Hollywood with all these movies? That they're not all going to be able to get Oscar recognition. They're kind of cannibalizing each other. I mean, I have some concern that Butler is going to overshadow both those films because it's more of a crowd pleaser and it was first out.
Yeah, I always think the release dates of films is always a bit of a problem because often the ones that get nominated closer to the Oscars tend to get more recognition.
Mm-hmm. You mean release? Yeah, release closer.
Yeah.
Speaking of release dates, we'll get back to the Oscars. I have some questions about that, but this segues into another question I had for you. How do you feel about the release date situation? Because you guys get movies a lot later than the US, but sometimes you get them earlier than we do. For instance, I think every Marvel movie is opened in the UK first.
Yeah.
Right? So does that make a difference to you? When you get a movie before us, are you excited? And when you get after us, does that take some of the excitement away?
I like it when it's released in America before, because it works for me, because I can read the reviews and decide, do I want to go and see this or not? And when it gets released here, I always feel I don't see why it gets released in certain places before others. It's never made sense to me. So it annoys me a little bit to see people get head up about it, and like you do your videos and people from Britain will post, "Why have you done this? We haven't seen this yet." And I just think, grow up, it happens.
Does the American box office influence your decision on what to see? If something's a hit here, will you be like, well, maybe I should see it?
Yeah, quite a lot. Especially Movie Math. I see that, I think the big ones, that's clearly worth going to see. But I use Rotten Tomatoes quite a lot as well.
It's interesting you say that, because I think foreign box office is beginning to influence the United States as well, and American audiences, and certainly the industry. You know, if, like, for instance, if a movie can open a few days or a week or so overseas and blow up, it kind of adds momentum to its U.S. release. You know, the reason I think that they do the release date system, they're getting more day and date, you know, globally. But I think that sometimes it's usually like just a matter of release date schedules. Like, for instance, you have different holidays than we do. So sometimes they'll want to have a movie come out when you'll have a holiday weekend, and, you know, we won't. So, or for instance, like President's Weekend is a big movie weekend here, but the middle of February isn't going to be so big for you guys, you know? So I think that sometimes is also a factor. Are there any big holiday weekends for movies that you guys have that you can think of off the top of your head that we don't have?
No, I don't think it's not quite as centralized as it is with you guys. So the American films get released a lot around Thanksgiving and, as you said, President's Day. Whereas for us, I think it's just whenever they can get the slots put it out. As soon as possible.
When we have all our Thanksgiving movies, are you guys like, what's going on? Why do we have all these movies all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's the Christmas movies, if anything.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, you celebrate, because, yeah, Christmas is more, it's more an extroverted holiday, and I think, isn't it in the UK, it's centered around the home, right? Doing things at home?
Yeah, definitely.
That's also very interesting. Yeah, it's more commercial here. Okay, so let's talk Oscars. This is an Oscar video. So you and I both talked about what we feel about, what we'd like to see nominated, what we're excited about. My next question for you is the BAFTAs. How important are the BAFTAs in the UK? Are they do you guys pay a lot of attention to them, or are they at the same level of the Oscars for you?
I think the Oscars are probably higher up in the pecking order, because you see the BAFTAs often it'll be, oh yeah, the BAFTAs are coming up, and then someone will get the Oscar and the BAFTA will automatically be shrugged off. And I've never really understood that, because it just seems it's an award, it's a commend, you shouldn't shrug it off, no matter how small the company is that's giving it to you.
Right.
It should be seen as it's an achievement. You've done something and people have recognised it, and people often see it as insignificant compared to the Oscars.
Do you watch the BAFTAs?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, okay. How are they on running length? Do they have that under control?
Yeah, I'd say so. So just shorten it all down. It's all pre-recorded, and then they cut everything down.
Really? You don't have it live?
No, we don't get to watch it on TV until it's been cut and edited.
Oh, that's fascinating. Do they ever leave anything out? Is there ever a scandal?
Yeah, sometimes it gets in the news.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so how important is the host of the BAFTAs? Because we never hear about who's hosting the BAFTAs.
I never actually know if we have a host or not, because it tends to be loads of different people.
Oh, interesting. So it's more about the presenters. There's no single host.
Yeah. We never seem to have one set person.
Was Ricky Gervais a national hero when he roasted Hollywood for the Golden Globes?
Yes, definitely.
How do you feel about Seth MacFarlane? How did Seth MacFarlane play over there as a host?
We don't often notice the hosts as much as the Americans do, obviously, because it's like a nationally watched thing for you guys. We just tend to hear about who's won it, so it's a bit of a shame, really, because the people who put in all the effort to present it get no recognition over here.
You don't watch the Oscars live?
No, I don't think we can.
Oh, because you'd be sleeping, right?
Yeah.
What do they air? Do they air anything? Do they air like an edited down version, or it's just you read it in the paper?
Yeah, it tends to be the edited down version will just be put on the BBC One at a time that no one watches any television that's any good.
So I guess you don't care that Ellen DeGeneres is hosting. That was one of my questions. How do you feel about Ellen DeGeneres coming back to host?
I think that'll be good. I like Ellen.
She's fun.
Especially Dory.
Oh yes, everyone loves Dory. So 2 other topics I wanted to ask you about, as long as I have you here, that I think are very interesting with the UK. You know, you talked about the fact that you have a lot of pride when UK talent wins US awards. And I've talked about the fact that Daniel Radcliffe has shown a tremendous loyalty to British film, to the British film industry, and been really wanting to make movies in the UK and with UK talent. Are you guys aware when movies come out if they're made in the UK?
Yeah, because it's often a lot more promoted in the UK than the American movies are, because you see a lot more of the banners for the British movies come out than you do for the American movies.
Really? That's really interesting. You know, and it's funny you say that because I haven't been to London in a while, but I was in Paris about 2 years ago, and I was surprised at how little advertising there was for films. You know, here we have big billboards and posters and ads on television everywhere. It's like one of the major sources of advertising, things that utilize advertising. But in Paris, it was really like not a lot. It was very small. You would only see a few ads sprinkled about for movies, and they often were, French films, not American films. Is that the case in the UK, or is it just you have a lot of movie advertising, but it's for UK films?
It is to an extent. We're not quite as... You've got the American directors and producers really put all the effort in to get everyone's attention on the advertising for it, whereas I think the British directors kind of often accept that it's only going to be the audiences that want to see it, and if they want to see it, they'll know when it's coming out, and they'll know who's in it, and where it's going to be, and what it's going to be about.
That's fascinating. So the last thing I want to ask you is that over in the UK, you know, we have PBS, but you have a substantial amount of government funding for your entertainment. It funds almost all the television channels, right? You have a couple now. It used to just be a few BBC channels, but I think you have like ITV or something, right?
Yeah.
All right, but they're all government funded, am I correct, mostly? Mm-hmm. And then also the National Lottery funnels a lot of its money into films.
Yeah, definitely.
So that doesn't happen here. So how do you guys feel? What's cool about that, and what's not so cool?
I think it's good because it gives the people who might not have as much recognition for things they've already done the chance to really give it their best shot. They get the opportunities from the government, from the National Lottery funding. But I think the big problem with it is the fact that they'll only fund what they want to see. And if they don't want to see it, it'll be, no, go away, we're not giving you the money for it. And that kind of puts a big hole in the kind of stuff we get released here. It all seems to be relatively similar a lot of the time.
That's really fascinating, because when you think about it, there is like a tone. There's like, you know, you can spot a UK production. You know, because I just recently saw Closed Circuit, and I said, oh, this reminds me a lot of a BBC miniseries.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating that, you know, I'm sure that the council, you know, the government body that decides this feels they're doing a service and a good job, but that's true. You guys aren't turning out like Terminator films.
No, definitely not. That's the big problem with it. It's the very up-class people who only want to see the really posh, snobby films, and we don't get the kind of more interesting and more intriguing, unique films that a lot of you Americans get to.
Do you think there'd be more UK talent staying in the UK if they could make those kind of movies?
Yeah, certainly.
Wow.
Tom Hooper, I think, would probably be my favourite example compared to Ben Drew. Because Tom Hooper obviously got the funding for things like The King's Speech and Les Miserables, which are very sophisticated films. Whereas Ben Drew filmed Ill Manners, which was violent, aggressive, rude, but reflected modern society, and I don't think he got much government funding for that. So they didn't want to see such a violent and unfortunately realistic film, but he still made it, and it didn't get the advertising and the promotion that it deserved because it was such a down-to-earth, realistic film, and that's the big problem with it, is the names that might not have as much recognition already don't get the opportunity they might want to because they're not doing what the government want them to do.
That's fascinating. What a great note to end on. Thank you, Rhys. That was such a great insight into both your feelings about the Oscars and the UK entertainment industry. Down below, you can see Rhys's YouTube avatar and his address. Go visit his YouTube channel. And also, if you see him in the BTT YouTube comments, say hi. And Rhys, thank you so much for being an engaged BTT viewer. I truly do love your comments and interacting with you, and I'm glad I got to finally talk to you face to face.